Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 471 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Coastman. I'm joined, as ever, by former heavyweight world title challenger, the main man himself, Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Who else? Eddie, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, my man. How about you?
Always good when speaking with you, Eddie. We're going to dive straight into the review part of the show. I don't know if you saw anything from last week. If you did, jump in. We're going to start last Friday. We're going to be speaking to this man in a few moments' time. Sam Gilley topped the card at the York Hall, Bethnal Green, London. It was live on TNT. He's now 18-1, a TKO for him in the fourth against Jack McGann, now 10-2 with a draw. A successful defence of Gilley's Commonwealth Super-Welterweight title. Gilley was coming off a year out the ring. Jack McGann down in the second round from a right hand. And, ended up stopping McGann in the fourth. Like I say, we'll be speaking to Gilley soon. Also on the card as well, Courtney Bennett. He was 5-0. He was upset here. He's now 5-1. He got TKO'd in the 8th round against Nick Webb, friend of the show. We had him on about a month ago, something like that. Nick Webb now 18-3. Really happy for him. What a brilliant way to come back after about 2.5 years out the ring. He didn't box. He didn't come in particularly good shape. He's had a lot of time out the ring, had to go and find a job, became a dad. I'm so happy for him to come back here with no warm-up fight, jump straight back in with a highly touted prospect and go in there and win the vacant Southern Area heavyweight title. Courtney Bennett's corner advised the ref to stop the fight, but what a mad fight. I felt that Nick Webb was brilliant, straight away. Like the first round, I liked what Webb was doing. There's always a danger when you're watching Nick Webb. He's either going to land a brilliant shot or he's going to, get tired and possibly get stopped or whatever. But he was brilliant the other day, and I was so surprised because he's never been 8 rounds in his career, and he's probably never been, he's never been that inactive. And I don't know how great his preparations were, but I tell you what, I'm so proud of Nick Webb. What a brilliant win. Also on the card, a huge shock here. Tommy Fletcher upset badly. He was a 1-20 favourite going into this fight. He's now 8-1. He lost on points very wide in the end, over 8 rounds, to Milans Volkovs, who's now 11-3 with 2 draws. Mad fight. Tommy Fletcher, after about 2 rounds, seemed to be completely gassed and didn't really throw a punch. Well, I say didn't really throw a punch, but his work rate had just zapped. Like, I've never seen anything like it. 2 rounds and he was done. And I know that he's known for his power. He's a big guy. He's a fit, strong fighter. But where was it the other night? And I have to say, when he was losing these rounds because he was being outworked, he didn't show any signs of desperation. I hate to do this, and I hate to be critical of fighters because they're doing something that I couldn't do, getting in that ring, putting their lives on the line every single time they fight. And for me, like I say, I don't like to throw this word out, but or even an allegation out, but I really, really question Tommy Fletcher's heart. And I know that you might say that's a bit harsh. He's still a prospect. He's only had, 9 fights now. But to be losing rounds and just seemingly content with just allowing it to happen. Like, at no point did he even try. It's like he, bet on himself to lose on points or something. It was like the most confusing of performances, and how he just emptied the tank after like 2 rounds is just incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Like I say, it was just madness, and he just let the fight slip away. He let that fight slip away. I feel like he could have done more. He maybe couldn't have won the fight, but could have done more. Like I say, I was just watching him barely throw a punch. That fight there has honestly made me really, really change my whole opinion on Tommy Fletcher now. And like I say, it was alarming, the fight the other night. It was alarming. I felt like I learned a hell of a lot about Tommy Fletcher. And, that was, a lot of things were lacking there. A lot of things were lacking. If you've got real ambitions in this sport to get to a high level, he was missing a hell of a lot of ingredients the other night against just, a complete unknown. It was just simply not good enough, and it was enough, in my opinion, for Frank Warren to drop him. Honestly, he'll be very lucky if he winds up on a big card again, because that was, he's got a lot of making up to do. That was horrendous the other night from Tommy Fletcher. Also on that card, Royston Barney-Smith with a KO in the second. He's now 12-0. A KO for him, like I say, in the second against Carlos Rayo, who's now 13-2. Rayo counted out after being floored by a right hand to the body. That wraps up the York Hall card. Moving now to the Copper Box Arena in Hackney Wick, Middlesex, United Kingdom. Is it Middlesex? Doesn't feel like it is. Anyway, whatever. This one was live on Sky Sports. I applied for this card, but once again, Boxer had turned me down for a media pass. I'm not entirely sure what I've ever done wrong. They've never had me at one of their events. I'm not entirely sure why, because we've been in the game now for over 9 years. A hell of a lot of people sat ringside have been in the game for not even a half of that, but not entirely sure what that's about. But anyway, let's move to the undercard. We saw a return to the ring for former world champion Shannon Courtney. She's now 8-3. It was an unsuccessful return to the ring. She looked quite good on the pads on the media workout on Fight Week, but 2 years out the ring, coming back as a former champion, she lost to Catherine Ramos, who was only 5-3 with a draw. That's a massive upset there over 6 2-minute rounds. Ramos now 6-3 with a draw. Shannon Courtney now should probably think about walking away, because I don't want to see her racking up even more losses, but what a shock loss there. Also on the card, Francesca Hennessy moved to 5-0, a points win for her over 8-2s against Ana Moraes, who's now 5-1. That was quite a spicy one, I suppose, in the build-up. Ana Moraes was a bigger fighter, and like I say, was confident, was undefeated. Also on the card, this was a bit of a shock in terms of it going the distance, but Anthony Yard, now 26-3, a points win over 10 rounds against Rouse Vilkans, now 17-2. Vilkans down in the first round, and it was pretty much the first right hand that Anthony Yard threw, or it might have even been the first punch Anthony Yard threw. The punch was landed, I think, in the first 10 or 11 seconds of the first round. Down goes Vilkans, and straight away, everyone's like, oh man, what is this? Like, this is embarrassing. But then Vilkans gets up and manages to somehow last out the remainder of the fight. I don't know how he did it. I felt that Anthony Yard was quite poor, in all honesty, especially his defence. His defence is quite good. I don't think he gets enough credit for his defence most of the time, Anthony Yard. But the other night, he was getting hit way too often, and his performance was very, very flat. In the end, he tried to say that, after dropping him in the first round, he thought it was going to be easy, and I guess it kind of affected him mentally, I suppose, because he thought this is going to be a walk in the park, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't a walk in the park. And like I say, he took a lot of quite heavy shots off of Vilkans, so it made for an entertaining fight, a more entertaining fight than anyone in the world expected it to be. But it also wasn't, wasn't the kind of performance we wanted to see from Anthony Yard in his boxer debut, especially if we're going to see the Josh Buatsi fight next. I've always been an Anthony Yard man in that fight. I always felt that he would beat Buatsi. However, the other night he was very poor, in all honesty, and it's really made me question that now. So, yeah, he didn't really make anyone excited about his chances in the fight with Buatsi, and it's a shame because Anthony Yard's been on Sky, in the studio. I think the week before for the Beterbiev Bivol fight, he was in the studio giving his opinions and getting in front of the cameras again on Sky Sports. It was brilliant. Then he's fighting the next week, and he's a knockout merchant, but he couldn't provide one the other night. So yeah, a little bit deflating there from Anthony Yarde, unfortunately. But like I say, he's a friend of the show. He's a nice guy, always has been. So hopefully he can go away, and if the Buatsi fight is to be next, we can see a much better version of him. Also on the card, Dan Aziz. This was a shock, I've got to be honest. This was an absolute joke. He's now 20-2 with a draw. That means that Dan Aziz has gone without a win for 3 fights in a row. However, most people, a lot of people, really did feel like he won this fight the other night. In the other corner was Louis Edmondson, who, for me, lost the fight, but he somehow gets to 10-0, a majority decision over 12 rounds for the vacant British and vacant Commonwealth light heavyweight titles. Edmondson also had a point deducted in round 8 for punching on the break. That point deduction for me was the moment where Louis Edmondson, on my card, needed a stoppage win, and he was boxing like a man who was well ahead, and maybe he knew something that we didn't, because I was just so shocked with that in the end. Dan Aziz was 4-1 to win on points. I think I said that on last week's podcast. I bet on that myself, and it should have 100% come to fruition there, because even the in-play odds had Dan Aziz, well ahead. The massive favourite, like he had it in the bag. That bet was pretty much a winning bet. Then all of a sudden they announced Edmondson as the winner. That was incredible. So it's a shame for Dan Aziz, because it was a must-win fight, in all honesty, I think, for him. And I felt like he did win, but unfortunately, in reality he didn't. So not sure where he goes, because it's a bad thing to lose to a fighter who's only 9-0, who hasn't really boxed anyone of note as a pro. So where do you go after that? I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't want to switch places with him right now, but all the best to him. And I think anyone that watched the fight felt that Dan Aziz won, sadly. Also on the card, another shock. This was quite a shock, I felt. Michael McKinson, friend of the show, he was on a couple weeks ago. He's been out there in Philly sparring with Boots Ennis, come back to the UK. I did say when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, anyone that listened to that podcast, I said to him, it's not really ideal considering that you're fighting yourself, yet you're out in Philly on a completely different time zone as part of another guy's training camp when you've got your own fight yourself. And he kind of said, well, it's world-class sparring, blah, blah, blah. He came back from the USA quite early, so he had time really and truly to to readjust to the time zone and all the rest of that. But I think it probably disrupted his preparations, and his performance in the end was very flat from Michael McKinson. And that is probably the opposite to what you would describe from the usual Michael McKinson performance that we're used to seeing. He's now 26-2. A unanimous decision win, clearly in the end, over 12 rounds against South Africa's Talani Mbenge, now 21-2, of a fight there for the vacant IBO welterweight world title. Yeah, Michael McKinson, his movement wasn't quite right the other night, and usually he's a master of judging distance, and that didn't seem to be too good the other night. He seemed to get hit way too often. Sometimes he'd stand, I think when he was frustrated with himself, stand and trade with Mbenge, which wasn't a good tactic. I still felt he picked up a bunch of rounds, and I felt at times he was, making Mbenge miss with some brilliant head movement, and the way he'd slide out the way of a shot, and he'd counter Mbenge. The more skillful boxer was clearly McKinson, but in the end, he just didn't do enough, and he allowed himself to get outworked. He allowed himself to sit on the ropes too long at times. He allowed himself to just stand in the pocket for far too long at times. And yeah, his feet just looked really heavy for the first time ever, really. I've always, been a massive fan of Michael McKinson's footwork. I think he's brilliant when he's firing on all cylinders. But yeah, he looked quite flat the other night. He said he felt quite tired. really early on, and I'm not sure what went on with him, but I'm very sad for him as well, because like I say, not many people know Talani Mbenge. If you're not a hardcore boxing fan, it's probably not a name you're going to recognise. I've known about him for a long time. Michael McKinson's known about him. Michael McKinson correctly said his 2 losses were close decision losses on the road in his opponent's backyards. That tells a story in itself, but here he goes into another opponent's backyard and wins the fight. So yeah, again, not entirely sure where this leaves Michael McKinson. He's always been a kind of high risk, low reward type of fighter, I think. Like, he gives anyone in the world, absolute nightmares when he's at his best. But he didn't look at his best the other night, and yeah, I'm not too sure what to make of it. But again, it's a tough spot he finds himself in, and yeah, I hope he's doing okay. I'm going to reach out to him, to be honest with you, because it's what I like to do to friends of the show after suffering a loss, just to make sure that they're okay. I feel like I'm going to probably do that at some point this week or next, just to make sure he's doing okay. But yeah, all the best to him. Talani Mbenge, on the other hand, obviously the sky's the limit right now. It's a great win for him. It's done his career all the well of good, and yeah, beating a guy like McKinson, that's going to do his career a hell of a lot of good. So, yeah, can't take nothing away from him. He boxed like it was, his world title fight, which I suppose in some ways it was, being for the IBO. But yeah, Michael McKinson, I'm hoping he'll be back. And yeah, once we see him back to his best, it'd be great to see a rematch, because I think he's definitely got enough to beat Talani Mbenge. And moving on to the main event, Adam Azim moved to 12-0, a KO for him in the 8th round against O'Hara Davies, now 25-4. Davies down once in the 5th and once in the 8th. Counted out in the end in the 8th. Really good performance from Adam Azim. Obviously, like I say, he hurt O'Hara Davies early on. I think the fight was kind of cagey for the first couple of rounds. Then they both started to open up, and we all knew that, these two guys are friends. Some people were thinking maybe, they're not going to go 100% on each other, but to be fair, they did. They were both throwing big shots. I felt that, O'Hara Davies tried to give it a go. Some people felt he was going to get stopped, nice and early in the fight. I think that's because he lost, obviously, to Barroso in a round, but you can't read too much into that. I think he did get caught cold that night there in the States. But here, he's going in with a friend, effectively, and a guy that he's probably done many rounds with in sparring. So, I feel like there's going to be mutual respect, and Adam Azim's probably not going to go at him 100 miles an hour in the opening rounds. He's going to wait for him to possibly tire or just warm into the fight himself. And that's what we saw. Like I say, from about this kind of 3rd, 4th round, that's when I think both guys tried to up the ante. Adam Azim was getting the better of it, and like I say, it was probably his career best performance. He looked really good, and wind up stopping O'Hara Davies in the end. O'Hara, I don't want to say quit. He kind of said a lot in his post-fight interview. He said that's going to be it. He's going to retire. He knew he was going to retire, win, lose or draw before this fight. So he probably had that in the back of his mind. Once he'd been down once, he got back up. He carried on for a few more rounds. When he was down again, I think he probably just thought, look, I've had enough now. I don't care if it's a quit. I don't care what it looks like. He's never really cared what the public's opinion of him is anyway. So I think he just thought, forget this, I'm going to collect my paycheck and I'm not really bothered what anyone thinks, because I'm not going to be fighting again anyway. I think that's a decision he came to before the fight. So all the best to him. I think he probably didn't, I don't know, can you say he's an underachiever? I don't know, maybe, probably, to be honest. But yeah, a much better human being than I think he was ever given credit for being. I don't think many people actually know the real O'Hara Davies, sadly. And I don't think at times he's done himself any favours with the press and with the fans and stuff. And I don't think he's the brightest spark. And I think he's kind of at times been advised, quite poorly in terms of how to act and what to say in media, events and things. So, yeah, I've spoke to O'Hara on a one-to-one basis, and I was quite surprised at how kind of cool he was. So all the best to him if this is to be it. And like I say, Adam Azim marches on. Cannot wait to see him in that fight with Dalton Smith, which we hope we're going to see at some point next year, surely. But yeah, Adam Azim, again, sky's the limit. Looks like a really good prospect at the moment. Moving now to the final card to mention. It went down at the Carib Royale Orlando in Florida, USA. This one was live on Amazon Prime. Don't know if you saw this one, Eddie, like I say, so jump in if you did. But Gary Antonio Russell on the undercard. He is currently 20-1. A KO for him in the fourth. Friend of the show there. He was able to knock out Jaden Bernias, who's now 6-3 with 2 draws. So that was good for Gary Antonio. And the main event, Bakram Murtazaliev, the IBF Super-Welterweight world champion. Some say the undeserving champion. They don't like the way he was shoehorned into a title. He got in there, though, with Tim Tszyu coming off that loss to Sebastian Fundora. Tim Tszyu now 24-2. Murtazaliev now 23-0. A big upset here. A TKO in just the third round. Tim Tszyu down 3 times in the second. Really and truly. Referee probably shouldn't have allowed it to go into the third, but he goes down once in the third, and that was all she wrote. He could not stop getting hit with the exact same punch. That left hook from Murtazaliev just kept landing for Murtazaliev. Tim Tszyu didn't know how to defend it. Some people are actually saying maybe he's suddenly unable to take a shot. I've seen some people saying that Tszyu should retire. I don't know if that's a bit of an early shout. That one came in from Rick Glazer, who is quite a controversial character at the best of times and says a lot of outlandish things on Twitter, but it is what it is. That was one man's opinion. Yeah, I was shocked with that, Eddie. Yeah, I mean, it's different if you're getting caught with different shots or whatever, but he was down 4 times from the same punch in just 3 rounds. Very unfortunate for Tim Tszyu. Anyway, that is all we have time for in this part. That is the end of the review part. It's now time to welcome this week's special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the reigning Commonwealth Super-Welterweight champion. It is, of course, Mr. Sam Gilley. Sam, welcome back on the show, mate.
Thanks for having me back, mate. Good to speak to you.
Always good to speak to you as well, Sam. So we last spoke pretty much a year ago today. At the time, you'd just been in a Fight of the Year contender against Louis Greene. You were expecting to be out again early in 2024. However, you were out for almost a year in the end, obviously. For those that don't know, why didn't anything happen early this year for you, Sam?
I picked up a hand injury against Louis, and then they offered me a fight in February. But the hospital said I wasn't going to be punching until February. So I couldn't do that date. And then in the meantime, I was meant to be fighting Jack McGann then in Saudi for the British and Commonwealth. And in the meantime, he chose to fight Louis. And Louis obviously went out there and beat him. So I was stuck with Louis again. And then Sky just didn't put us on the show until I was lucky enough to sign for Frank Warren, and I think it was about 3 days later he gave us a fight date. So, yeah, it was a very mad year, to be fair.
Yeah, a lot of unexpected situations there. Obviously, yeah, Jack McGann fighting Louis Greene out in Saudi. We know what happened there. In our last interview last year, obviously, we spoke extensively about the Louis Greene fight. You could barely move when you woke up the next day. By the way that you were talking, it seemed like there's no way in the world you'd want to fight him again. However, yeah, you surprised everyone when you signed for that rematch.
Yeah, mate. I've got full belief in myself in beating him again. Like, it's just competition at the end of the day. You know what I mean? It will be an hard night's work, but unfortunately, that's the game we're in. We are going to wake up sore most of the time.
Yeah. And, yeah, obviously, like we know, Louis Greene had to pull out. Jack McGann was given the shot in the end as a replacement. You had him down in the second the other night. You got a little bit trigger happy after that, I think, it's fair to say, but you managed to put him away in the fourth. Talk me through it, Sam.
Yeah, no, in the second, so I put him down, and then he went into his shell a little bit more. So I had round 3 off, let him come on to me a little bit, to give him that little bit of confidence, so that he'd expose himself and leave some gaps again, like in the fourth. And that's what he done.
And Sam, talk to me about the preparations, because I know that when Louis was fighting Jack McGann, before the fight, you were very confident in Louis Greene. We both were. We spoke about it. But, we saw what happened. He completely demolished Jack McGann. Did you kind of feel like this would be an easy touch for you psychologically?
No, I'd never go into a fight thinking it was going to be an easy night's work. Like, I have to go in there and perform to the best of my ability, no matter who it's against. Because I'm like, if I go in there 50%, I can get beat by someone that shouldn't beat me. So I've got to make sure I don't make a mistake other fighters make. I mean, I think Jack was overlooking Louis slightly when he went into that fight with him, and we see what happened there. So yeah, I've got quite a strong mentality, and I respect everyone. So no matter who it is, I'll be in there 100% focused.
And talking of strong mentalities, your mentality was tested for sure. After the fight, you looked down the camera lens and you said, "Nan, that was for you." For those that don't know, you very sadly lost your nan during camp. Firstly, I'm extremely sorry for your loss, Sam. How were you able to kind of shut off your emotions to some degree and get on with the task at hand? It must have been difficult.
Just purely by following an example my nan set. Mate, honestly, she went through every bit of cancer treatment. She was in a hospice, on her final days, and she was still smiling. She was still cracking jokes. Like, she just took each day as it come, and so there was no. And the one thing that my nan loved was me. She was so proud of my boxing, so I had to make sure that I done it for her as well, and not go and ruin anything. Because if I went off the rails, and I stopped training or whatever, I come off the diet or whatever, she'd be fuming. So the last thing I could do was go and do that because of what happened to her. So I had to channel it into a way that I was doing it for her, and that kept me motivated and kept me head on my shoulders. I've got her funeral on Tuesday, so I was quite lucky that even though I lost her before the fight, the funeral wasn't until after, so I could just sort of really put that to bed and not think about it until this week.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, man. I'm assuming, that's going to be a tough day next week, Sam.
Yeah. I mean that'll be a horrendous day, but we was lucky to have her for as long as we did. So it's just about going to say bye to her now. But like I said, that's come after the fight, so that's probably the only positive thing that come out of that situation.
Oh man, like I say, sorry again, Sam.
No, thank you.
You signed with Frank Warren this year. That was great. That was really good, because I think I wanted to see you with either Frank or Eddie for a number of years. To be honest, I'm glad that you've put pen to paper with Frank. Is that exciting? Oh
mate, I mean, we couldn't ask for something better, can you? With what's going on in boxing at the minute, it's a very exciting time to be a fighter. A very exciting time to be under Frank Warren's banner. So yeah, when Rod come out with a meeting, I was over the moon. Like I've said a couple of times, I'm 30 now. I've been boxing since I was 11, and this is the first time I've actually been signed to anybody. 30 years old, so it's been a long time coming.
Excellent, man. I don't know if you had a horse in the race the other night, but also on the card, friend of the pod at least, Nick Webb pulled off an upset win. I wanted to know if you caught any of that. What did you make of that? If you saw anything?
Courtney boxes out of our gym.
Oh, sorry, man. Bad question.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, so he took that fight, and we had really high hopes for Courtney. But I walked out and I stood by the door because I wanted to keep an eye on it. And I watched about 2 rounds and I went back in.
Because Jesus.
Nick Webb he just had too much experience for him. So, but like I say, people beat themselves. Like at the end of the day, it's a 2-horse race boxing. Someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. So you just got to take it on the chin, quite literally, and learn from it and move on. And that's what Courtney's got to do now.
I had no idea he boxed in your gym, but I pretty much agree. I mean, like I say, it didn't make much sense to me, I'll be honest, the fight beforehand. I was thinking, unless Nick Webb's been sitting on a sofa for 2.5 years or whatever it was that he was out the ring, it's quite a risky fight. He's only ever lost at good level. Anyway, we'll move on from that. What's next for you, Sam? What do you want to do next?
Well, I looks like I'm going to have to go into a third camp for Louis Greene.
Oh.
But, because, mate, honestly, another thing about me being out for the year, I've had 2 European title offers, one at middleweight, one at super welter, and I turned both down just purely because mate, I can't do Southern Area English Commonwealth and not do the British. So it was a little bit of me as well being a bit not anal with it, being mate, I said to Rod, I want to fight for that British title. That was my dream belt when I was a kid, to win that one. So I couldn't skip over it. So when we said to Frank after, we still want the British title, so that's what Frank said as well. So it looks like we'll do our best to get that fight made, and hopefully we can both get in the ring this time and close that chapter, because it's still in my head.
Yeah, that'll be, I'm assuming, early next year.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Yeah, hopefully I'll have a couple of weeks off, and then we can get some training going and get some news, and that's the main thing of getting with Frank as well. Where he's got a lot of shows and he's got a lot of opportunities. Hopefully I can just stay busy, because obviously I've come out I've not even got a bruise from Friday, so I'm ready to get straight back in there whenever.
I wanted to ask, who are your personal top 3 super welters in Britain, Sam?
In Britain, well, it depends if you're going to put Josh Kelly in there, because obviously he's back at number 1 in BoxRec, but you don't know whether he's going to go middle 154. So if he's at 154, you've got to put Kelly in there. Ishmael Davis, your fighter. Obviously, this is without me, but I really like Janae Boston as well. He's a really good fighter.
You being modest by not putting yourself in there?
No, that's what I'm saying. This is without me. If you put me in
without
there, I'm going me, Kelly, and then probably Ishmael or Boston neck and neck, I reckon.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's like I say, it's a good division at the minute. A lot is riding on what Josh Kelly's doing. I think that win against Ishmael Davis was a good win, although the judges saw it quite close. This weekend. Yeah, so did I. This weekend in Manchester, Sam, I don't know if you're going to be watching at all, but Jack Catterall against Regis Prograis. I wanted to know if you had a take on that one.
Mate, great fight. I mean, if this was a couple of years ago, it would be obviously genuine 50-50, but I think Catterall's on such a roll at the minute, and he's in the prime of his career. I think Prograis is still an elite level fighter, but I think Catterall will get the job done, especially at home as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a brilliant fight. It's another kind of boxer against puncher type fight, which we saw to some degree with Beterbiev Bivol. So I like those matchups. A lot of boxing fans do. Just before we wrap things up, Sam, we've kind of whizzed through it quicker than I thought, but any closing words to the listeners if you want to sign out with a little message? It's always great to have you back on. It's just a shame that it was a whole year because of unfortunate inactivity. Yeah, no, well,
obviously, thank you all for messages, support I've had over the weekend. I mean, my phone's gone absolutely crazy. I've never seen anything like it. So that's been lovely. And hopefully I can keep chatting to you regular now, because hopefully I'll be out as much as possible on Frank Warren's cards.
We absolutely hope so, man. It's a long time coming. I'm over the moon for you as well, Sam. As always, the pleasure is mine speaking with you. Thanks for your time. We'll speak again soon.
Cheers, mate. Speak to you soon.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. Just one piece of news to mention, and it's that the undisputed world champion Seniesa Estrada has very surprisingly announced her retirement. She got to 26-0, 9 KOs, 1 world titles in 2 weight classes, and obviously most recently boxed against Yokasta Valle. So that was a good fight. And it was a close fight, and she managed to get the win and obviously become undisputed that night there. And a lot of people wanted to see the rematch, but instead of that, we're not going to see it. And she's decided to retire. Like I say, it comes as a bit of a shock in the boxing world. A lot of people very, very confused. And yeah, wondering if she's maybe pregnant or whatever. We're going to have to wait and see. But that's the only piece of news we have this week. We're going to move now to the preview part of the show. We're going to start here with a card that goes down at the Karen Demirchian in Yerevan, Armenia. We don't normally go over here, but this one's going down on Saturday. We've got return to the ring for Murat Gassiev, 30-2 these days. He's back here, obviously up at heavyweight. Hasn't boxed since losing to Otto Wallin back in September of last year. He's back in the ring. It's been 13 months since that Wallin fight. He steps in with the undefeated 18-0 Kem Lundqvist. I don't know anything about this guy here. I've looked at his record. I don't recognise any names on it. I'm not expecting him to be too much. However, Murat Gassiev, if he does want to do anything at heavyweight, even though he's listed as, much younger than he looks, if he does want to do anything at heavyweight, he does need to, win here, win well, and obviously push on. He's running out of time, I think, actually, Murat Gassiev. Hell of a fighter at cruiserweight. Moving now to this one here. This one goes down again on Saturday at the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center in Dallas, Texas, USA. Over here, two friends of the show boxing on this card. We've got Albert Bell, 26-0 in a 10-rounder here against Jose Ivan Guardado Ortiz, who's currently 16-2 with a draw. This one was supposed to take place earlier on in the year. It was pushed back, and this is the rescheduled date. Also on that card, we've got Sergio Jimenez. He's 17-0, undefeated. He's in a 10-rounder against friend of the show, former world champion Mickey Bay, returning to the ring. He's 25-3 with a draw. It will be his 30th pro contest. All the best there to Mickey. Moving now then to the final card to mention. It goes down live on DAZN at the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester. Again, it's on Saturday, so there's a lot of boxing on the Saturday. This is quite a decent card. Let's start down the undercard. We're going to see the rematch between James Flint, 14-2, and Campbell Hatton, 14-1. It's over 10 rounds here at super lightweight. An instant rematch between the two. I've got to take my hat off to Campbell Hatton, because I did not think he'd be going straight back in with James Flint, because it's very risky. He probably lost the first fight because of his inexperience. James Flint, even though they've had a similar amount of fights in terms of numbers and stuff, James Flint knew a few of the old tricks. You can see he's obviously more seasoned as a pro, and he was able to just kind of old man Campbell Hatton and use that experience, like I say. So I'm very surprised to see Campbell Hatton go straight back in with him. I thought we might see Campbell go away, have a couple of confidence boosting fights, maybe, pick up a little bit more experience and then run it back. Why not? But to see it, instantly rematched is quite a thing. A lot on the line for Campbell Hatton, a lot more pressure than the first time round, I think, here as well, because he needs to win. It's pretty much sink or swim time now in this fight here. There's a bit of bad blood as well. I'm looking forward to that one on the undercard. Also on the card, we're going to see Pat McCormack, 5-0 in a 10-rounder at welterweight against Williams Andres Herrera, who's 16-3. I feel like I've seen that name before. I don't know who he's boxed. Let me have a little look quickly. Williams Andres Herrera, like I say, 16-3. He's been in with Paddy Donovan, got stopped in 7 rounds by Paddy Donovan. That's where I know the name from. That one was back in January of this year. Okay. Moving up the card once again. This one I think is going to be a cracker of a fight, by the way. This could potentially steal the show, actually. We're going to see Reece Bellotti. As everyone knows, I'm one of his biggest fans. He's 19-5. He's boxing here for the British and Commonwealth Super-Featherweight titles against Michael Gomez Jr., 21-1. I just want to have a little look at the odds here again, because if I'm not mistaken, I saw this at about 2-1 for a Reece Bellotti knockout, which I think is mad, that price there. Reece Bellotti can absolutely punch, and for me, I don't think that Michael Gomez Jr. has the best of defense, and, he's going to definitely get hit by Reece Bellotti. I can see this being, a good old fight. Reece Bellotti's the slight favourite, but you can get him at 2-1 for the KO, 2-1 for the decision win. There's some good prices. Even Michael Gomez, he's 5.5-1 for the KO and over 2-1 for the decision. So, in theory, you could back 3 of the 4 outcomes here and still wind up with a slight profit. unless obviously it ends in a draw. So yeah, that's interesting. There's some good prices on that fight there. I think someone's going to be in the money there. So that is, again, I think potentially a show stealer. Michael Gomez Jr., a lot of people were picking him to lose to Kane Baker, which I think was his last fight, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, came through that fight, looked quite good. It was a fun fight while it lasted there, and he managed to get Kane Baker out of there. But this is quite a step up from the likes of Kane Baker, in my opinion. Reece Belotti's a good fighter who obviously is on a heck of a run at the moment. He's put together 5 wins in a row. I'm expecting this one to be fiery. And the main event, I'm going to come to you, Eddie, actually here. Jack Catterall, 29-1. I still like to call him the uncrowned, undisputed, undefeated super lightweight world champion. Obviously, what a shame it was when he got robbed by Josh Taylor, but I don't want to go back over that. I was really happy for him that he was able to go in there and avenge the loss. But obviously, at no point did he ever hold a belt, and it's really sad. As for Regis Prograis, 29-2. Coming to the UK, obviously, last time he was here, he lost his O to Josh Taylor. So they've both mixed it with similar opposition. However, I am much, much, much closer with Regis than I am Jack Catterall, and I hate to say this because I think it's been made clear that I feel extremely sorry for Jack Catterall. He should have all the belts on his mantelpiece, but doesn't. But I am much closer with Prograis, so I'm pulling for Prograis in this fight, and I hate to say that. I really hate to say that as a Brit, but, much closer with Prograis. But it has to be said as well, if I'm going to be honest, Prograis looked really bad in his last 2 performances. He lost very clearly to Devin Haney, got dropped a few times, looked like got dropped once, looked like his punch resistance was gone a little bit, and the fight before that he made it out by the skin of his teeth. It's an interesting fight. It's another kind of boxer versus puncher, which I referred to earlier on in the show. I feel like the fact that both men are southpaws is going to be interesting. I think there's going to be moments where they do trade, and obviously you don't want to be trading with Regis Prograis. That's the one thing he does have, fight-changing power. If Jack Catterall starts doing that a bit too often, that could really be dangerous for him. But if he's able to stick to a game plan, which we've seen him execute time and time again, he's a brilliant boxer, Jack Catterall, very, very smart, good chin. I think he's got more power than he's given credit for, by the way. But it's his boxing IQ that I think is one of his strongest assets. So anyway, I've waffled on a bit too much, but what's your thoughts on it, Eddie? Interesting clash of styles.
Very interesting clash of styles. Yeah, you're right pretty much on everything you said there. And the biggest thing for me is concerning for Regis Prograis is, he's not looked good. I mean, he's been in an unfortunate situation where he's just, obviously Devin Haney's a talented fighter. Regardless of what he's been going in with this whole Ryan Garcia thing, he's still a talented young fighter, and he really proved it that night. And unfortunately, Prograis was just on the other side, and he just really proved. And I honestly thought that night that he had a good chance. Heavy puncher, awkward, not necessarily your normal style that you would face, which makes him a very difficult opponent for most. But it just didn't look like that with Devin. Devin took care of him. So, that there's that fight, and then the other fight that he had where he didn't look good even in a win, and it's just, it's a hard time for him. But listen, all it takes is one. You know what I mean? He goes in there, he lands the shot he needs to land, or he actually looks good, and a win over Catterall, and a lot of this crap is a distant memory. All his failures. So there's a possibility that he could do that. He punches hard enough to get anyone out of there. So you just can't, like you say, you can't stand in front of him. But Jack Catterall has proved a few different times his boxing ability and IQ and all. So. If I'm going to pick anyone, and looking at the fight with Haney, and now he's fighting another slick, counter puncher with a good IQ and good range management and all of that. It's an unfortunate situation he's in, but he's going to have to find a way to break that up. He's going to have to find a way to be able to utilize. If I'm talking about Prograis. He's going to have to find a way to you just, instead of trying to box with him, instead of trying to go jab for jab, to go in there and just make it a little bit ugly at times. Use the awkwardness, throw punches that people won't expect to come at awkward times. It's done well for Deontay Wilder, in the past, not right now, but in the past. So, I think, the awkward style can really help him in this type of fight, but he has to get busy. He has to get behind a serious offense. He's got to make this dude back up and be second. And if he can do that, maybe, he could pull something out, but it's just hard for me to see it. This kid can box and he's smart. And, it's going to be a tough night, but it'd be good to see Prograis do it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I've been going against the boxers recently too much. I've been taking the power over, and it's just so not me and my mentality when it comes to, how I pick and how I judge boxers and fighters. And it's just like, I've been going against my gut too many times. I'm not going to go against it, I'm not going to go against it this time. So I'm definitely leaning more toward Catterall, but it would be nice to see Prograis, come back and look good, since he hasn't in the last few.
Yeah, we need a title shot for the winner. I think, whoever wins this certainly deserves a title shot. Regis, though, it's a must-win fight for him. We interviewed him probably about a month ago now for this fight. In fact, it was probably a bit longer than that because I think it was before the fight got postponed. So anyway, didn't need to re-interview him for the same fight, so it's been a little while since that interview. But when I spoke to Regis, I really could sense in his energy he's got the bit between his teeth. However, I really felt that as well when he was going into the Haney fight. But again, if you're going to use your head, the smart money's probably on Catterall points. I think, he's not a puncher. I think that's a good thing for Regis. I think even though we all criticise Devin Haney's power, especially Prograis, he showed he could punch enough to get Regis's attention. He put him down and made him really think, made him second guess. I did say earlier on, a few moments ago, that I think Catterall doesn't get enough credit for his power, but probably Haney does punch harder than Catterall. He probably doesn't punch as hard as Haney. Could be getting that slightly wrong, but anyway, I don't think Catterall's going to stop Prograis. I don't think he's going to have enough power, to kind of drop him early and make him second guess like like Prograis did with Devin Haney. I feel like Prograis is going to be the one on the front foot trying to press the action, whereas Devin was putting Prograis on the back foot for large parts of that fight. So yeah, I think the style clash is going to be interesting. Like I say, the price for Catterall points is 4-7, so not great returns on that. But for Regis Prograis to win by KO is 6-1, which I think is insane. Now, it's another situation where I think it could be worthwhile backing both outcomes, because we're not going to see Catterall get a stoppage, and we're not going to see Regis Prograis win on points in Manchester either. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth backing Regis for the KO with a small amount, and maybe if you're going to put together a parlay or something, then you can counteract it and go with Catterall points, because I think one of them is definitely going to happen. And if you bet the correct amounts, you can profit from both outcomes really, or either outcome. Yeah. It's an interesting fight. Like I say, if I was pushed, I'd probably have to go with Catterall. But again, he needs to be switched on, and he normally is. He's really should be arguably undefeated. And he's been in there with some good opposition now. They seasoned him very, very well. And I think he's, pretty much in his prime right now, whereas Regis, it would certainly look like in his last couple of fights, seems to be on the slide a little bit. And I hate to say that because, like I say, he's a good friend. And I want to see him back to his best. And we're going to learn a lot about what he's got left on Saturday night, because if it's a close fight and he loses a close points decision, then, that's not the end of the world. Catterall is a very good fighter. But, if he loses clearly and gets completely, 120, 108 or 118, 110, then, that's going to be bad news for him. And, it's going to probably, have people thinking maybe he should think about walking away, because I don't think Regis himself would want to operate anywhere below world level. This is another world level fight, but it's a massive fight. There's a lot on the line. So yeah, I hope it's going to be a good fight, and not boring, because it has the potential to be a bit boring if Catterall, makes it boring, which he probably should if he wants to win the fight. So there's a lot of tangibles there. But anyway, that's the end of the preview part of the show. In part 1, we did the review part. Then we welcomed our special guest, Mr. Sam Gilley. In part 2, there was a brief bit of news. Then we wrapped up the preview part. The final thing for me to do now is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 471 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A massive shout out to this week's special guest, the reigning Super-Welterweight Commonwealth Champion, Mr. Sam Gilley. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. There has been one piece of news break whilst we've been recording the show, and it's that Naoya Inoue will be defending his undisputed Super Bantamweight titles against Australia's Sam Goodman. That one to take place at Tokyo's Ariake Arena, live on ESPN Plus, probably live on Sky Sports on December the 24th. So a treat there from Inoue and the rest of the Japanese boxing community on Christmas Eve. That is about everything now from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we'll see you all again same time next week.